Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. My guest is Harold Holzer. He's the director of the Roosevelt House Public Policy Institute at Hunter College. He's also a leading scholar of Abraham Lincoln, as well as the author of many books. His newest is about the presidents and the press, and it's due out in May. It's a subject of great interest, and we're going to talk about it, so welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks.
How many books have you written?
So written and co-authored and edited, this will be 54.
I was looking at you online, and I went to Amazon. It's page after page after page of books.
I hope you bought some.
When do you write them?
I've always written them on weekends because, I've had busy jobs. And so I was an absentee parent. Everything was going on around me while everybody let me write. And I used all my vacations for research.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And the other thing that I saw were the number of awards that you have gotten. How many? Do you know?
No.
I was going to count them, but the list was too long.
No, I've never counted.
But you remain modest. I mean, you're not overbearing.
Not with you, because you're so accomplished. With other people, I am.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm not overbearing. Because I like that it's under the radar that I have two lives.
Oh, good.
I don't want to promote one over the other too much.
And you're enjoying the new, well, it's not new anymore. You've been there for 4 years?
4 years, and at Hunter.
Let's talk a little bit about the Institute.
Okay. What was exciting for me initially, well, first of all, it's a city university system, and I'm a Queens College kid, so it's coming home. And second, it's in the historic importance. It's in Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt's home. This is where FDR recovered from polio. This is where Frances Perkins walked in after the election of '32, and FDR said, "You can be the first woman member of the cabinet." And she said, "Only if you do old age pensions, because I don't want to waste my time." And he said yes, and so Social Security was born in Roosevelt House.
Isn't that something?
And then it's the commitment to diversity and opportunity for students studying public policy and human rights with great teachers and community programs. So it's a great
Community
place.
programs are very popular.
Yeah, we are
very good.
Doing overflow. Yeah, we have great authors, great speakers. Our mutual friend Carl McCall has joined us as leader in residence for spring, and he's going to be teaching about race, politics, and education.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's an exciting place.
Right. So the book, it's got a long title, Presidents versus...
It's The Presidents versus the Press, from the Founding Fathers to Fake News.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did they all have bad relationships with the press?
From only beginning with George Washington, not before. Yes, it's astonishing. I mean, and they haven't come out and said that the press is the enemy of the people, but Trump's bark is worse than his bite. If you consider that John Adams signed the Sedition Act and jailed journalists, that Lincoln, my man, put journalists in jail without trial if they opposed enlistment or the draft. Woodrow Wilson prosecuted journalists during World War I, FDR to some degree, Barack Obama wiretapped journalists and their parents.
Oh my God.
So it is a rough legacy.
Yeah.
I think in some ways Trump is not organized enough to do the kind of crackdown that he wants, so it's mostly Twitter storms.
And he appears before them much more often.
Trump?
Well, these drop-in. He doesn't have formal press conferences.
Yeah, well, that's part of the book, too. He has sort of ended not only formal press conferences, but briefings by the press secretary have just completely ended. And I think he really loves the idea of state-run media. And if he can't have a state-run media, which, by the way,
Wilson... He's made Fox.
Yeah, right. Well, he has Fox. But Wilson also wanted a state-run media. FDR talked about it, and it was shot down.
But state-run meaning that they control it.
Completely.
Not
FDR wanted
not like C-SPAN.
Not like C-SPAN. No. Opinionated government news.
Yeah.
So Trump makes up for it with tweets. And, the week that we're meeting, he had one day this week where he tweeted 156 times. Keeps him out of trouble. That's all he must do.
It's so outrageous, and I can't believe that this is happening in the country. I just can't believe it. We come from, well, you're younger than I am, but we come from very exciting times.
Yeah.
where you never would have gotten, I don't think, gotten away with all of this, do you?
No. And I think one of the things that's happening as the undercurrent from Washington on is the change in technology.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Washington could jump up and down on a newspaper, which
Right.
he did, but nobody found out about it. And by the time they did, they would have forgotten it because it would take months. It took months for his farewell address to get published in the westernmost states. I mean, Kennedy found a way to go around the press by going on television. FDR by doing fireside chats. Obama introduced the internet in a big way to the White House and stopped meeting the press, and they had to rely on his the White House
Didn't
Facebook
Obama
and
have
Twitter.
regular press briefing?
Regular, but less than
Yeah.
his predecessors.
Yeah.
He made them use White House photographs as opposed to doing photo ops.
Mm.
Reagan had his weekly radio address, which he introduced.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in some ways you have to give Trump credit for mastering the technology of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
In 10 years, it'll be something else.
Do you
but
get his tweets?
I can, but I'm not sure how to do it. Do you know how to do Twitter?
No.
So I think it's for a younger and a more committed demographic. But occasionally I see them, and I've used some in my book. But he is, obviously, he's vituperative as anything. And the
Incredible.
language is, of course, not what we used to think of as presidential.
Your whole career, basically, has been mixed in with the press,
Yeah,
one way or another, right? When I met you, how many years ago? 50 years ago, you said?
50.
You were working for the Manhattan Tribune. Was that the West Side paper
It was
called?
the West Side. It was the old West Side News,
Yeah,
and it was called the Manhattan Tribune.
yeah.
And we were, because our publisher was very political, Bill Haddad, we covered West Side and Harlem politics. And I met Bella Abzug covering a debate at a place called the Pharmaceutical Center on 69th Street, which
Yeah.
I tried to walk past the other day. I don't think it's there anymore.
Okay.
It
Do you
was
think?
a little auditorium.
Oh, really? So that's when you went from that paper to Bella?
Not that year. This was 1969 because
Oh.
she was just launching her campaign
Right.
against Farbstein.
Right.
But he didn't show up for the debate. Barry Farber showed up for the
Ah.
debate. It was still
That
fun.
was the Republican.
He
It
was
was a primary and then a Republican.
right.
Yeah.
But he was laying in wait as Republican and Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, we covered the 1970 races that both Charlie Rangel and Bella Abzug beat entrenched
Mm-hmm.
congressmen, absentee congressmen, really, both of them. And it was a great year. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And that was the year that Jerry Nadler was elected.
The assembly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he had been ran for district
Right.
leader the year before.
Oh, right.
And all of our old friends, Maggie Payton and
Yeah.
Jerry, and
Yeah.
they were all involved in
And
West Side.
Haddad had
politics.
run for that seat
He had.
in '82, right?
In 66 or 64.
No, you're right, 64.
Yeah. And he was called an Egyptian
I
in
think it was
Jews.
62.
Okay.
Not
He was an Egyptian in Jews' clothing.
Right.
That's how Farbstein.
Right. Well, nobody really realized that he was Jewish because he was
Right.
married to a Paley and he lived in the Dakota.
And a Roosevelt.
And all of a sudden, it came out the last
know.
couple of weeks.
And it destroyed. And he only lost by a couple of hundred
Yeah.
votes.
I worked hard.
Well, Ted Weiss ran in that and lost twice.
Yeah, yeah.
All by handfuls
Right.
of votes. But Bella won by 9 points.
Bentley Cassell, who was they just had an obit because he was 103 years old. He was a judge. He ran.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It
But
was
do you
all-
remember? I mean, you remember those days.
Yeah, I
but
did.
we covered the reform designation, and the chair, who was a man, said to Bella, "You can't seat all these women from the caucus and all these places." And she said, "That's what you think." And she got the reform designation because
Yeah.
women
Right.
were seated as delegates.
Right. It was something.
Yeah.
It was a great campaign. I was at City Hall then. She was angry at me that I wasn't working in the campaign.
Well, you made
For
her work
change.
in City Hall
Yes.
for Lindsay.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think about the press when you were Bella's spokesperson?
Oh, so
Let's
we haven't
skip.
made that transition.
Right.
Yeah, so she asked me in '75 when she was getting ready to run for Senate.
Oh.
The paper was already dead. I was working
Yeah.
for mayor for the Beam administration in the public events office, and she asked me to be her press officer, and I said, you know, it sounds great, but I'm not sure I know how to do it. But I got great training from her press secretary, her longtime press secretary, who you probably remember, Howard Brock.
Oh, yeah.
And
he was terrific, right?
he was great.
Yeah, and he was so calm through all of Bella's.
Well, once in a while he would lose his temper and go crazy, but yes, he was generally calmer than Bella.
Yeah.
So I went to work for her on St. Patrick's Day, 1975. And she said, I said, I'm here. She said, don't tell me you're here. You ought to march up Fifth Avenue at this parade. Look to the left, look to the right. Tell everybody Bella Abzug is coming. Tell the reporters. So I walked backwards for 30 blocks. I had terrible, like, muscle pains afterwards. And when it was over, I went up to Bella and I said, Bella, I did it. I walked backwards for 30 blocks. I told people to the left and to the right that you're coming. And she said, you don't have to tell people I'm coming. I'm Bella Abzug. That was my first day.
That was a very hard campaign. She ran against Moynihan.
Yeah.
Now, did the press hurt her chance?
There were moments.
The Times didn't endorse her, right?
The Times, well, the editorial board endorsed her,
Oh, they did.
11-2, and the publisher overruled it for the first time in history. Punch Sulzberger, who became a friend when I worked at the Metropolitan Museum, he was our chair. He overruled the editorial board and insisted that it endorse Pat Moynihan, which they did. The editorial editor then resigned, John Oakes, and wrote a letter to the editor endorsing Bella himself, and they cut his letter. So this scandal went on for days. And I think it cost her the election because the Manhattan votes.
Because it was very close.
Less than 1%.
Yeah.
Less than it was 9,000 out of 1 million votes.
And it was almost the commercial, too. Wasn't that a problem? Wasn't there a commercial? Or she said she didn't know if she'd support Moynihan?
Well, so the late and lamented Maggie Payton and I worked every weekend for a year and a half on the road. 55 out of 62 counties. She did great upstate, by the way. She won Erie County. She won Monroe County. So one weekend we decided we're going to stand up for ourselves and our families, and we both had young kids. We stayed home, and she went up to the Rhinebeck Fair, and someone said, would you support Moynihan if he won? And she said, not necessarily. And that was the beginning of the end of that. Well, that and the Times.
Yeah.
But also our mutual friend Sandy Fruscher, who was Moynihan's spokesman, leaked the story to the New York Post that Ramsey Clark, who was also running in that primary, was gaining steadily in the polls, which was absolutely not true. But anything that could cast doubt on her momentum.
Is it similar, do you think, to now in a funny way with Elizabeth Warren?
I think the polling is more scientific now. I don't know what the polls then were. Right. But, oh, yeah, it's the same. I mean, look.
It's the thing that people don't think you can win.
Yes, a woman can't win, to quote Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Of course, he didn't say it, but he did. But the other problem is, I think, and you know, I've been dealing as a press person with the New York Times for 45 years, but they endorse women, but then they always write a story
it's not
destroying
helpful.
The woman. They did it to Bella, they did it to Hillary twice. They did it to Christine Quinn when she ran for mayor. They did it to Amy Klobuchar this year. You know, she's not nice to her staff. If a guy is not nice to his staff, he's considered a great leader or a powerhouse. But a woman, you know, not good. So
then let's jump to the museum. When you went to the museum, the relationship with the press was a different one, right?
Well,
the
product, the client was different. But it's still trying to get attention, trying to get stories. And there were crises about issues like Holocaust claims on art and national patrimony for Greek objects. It was an exciting time and an exciting place. And I got to work for Philippe de Montebello, who was a great museum director, and my pal Emily Rafferty, who was a great museum president. We had a great time. Yeah.
But I skipped over another politician, Mario Cuomo.
Oh, yes, between 1984 to 92.
Yeah, he didn't like negative press, did he?
Nobody likes negative press.
I know, but didn't he call? Did Bella call people when she didn't get something? No.
She never called the press directly. But Mario Cuomo had real relations with journalists.
Yeah.
I mean, with Jimmy Breslin and Jack Newfield and editors, and he stewed about the press. Bella was more cause-oriented. She didn't obsess about it. And if she made a mistake, she tried to correct it. Not that Mario didn't. He worked hard at the press.
Right, yeah.
But he had a lot of pals in journalism.
Right.
Bella didn't. I mean, I'm trying to think, Gloria Steinem and Letty Pogrom. I mean, women who founded Ms. Magazine were certainly pals.
Yeah.
But not that many others.
So what do you think Bella would be doing now?
She would be, well, she would have introduced an impeachment resolution before Adam Schiff and Jerry did. Remember, she introduced the impeachment of Nixon on day one.
Right.
And they tried to throw her out of the chamber. And she would be, 100 years old this year. By the way, that's another, so Hunter, her alma mater, is 150 this year. This is the Bella Centennial. So we hope to intertwine those. Hunter was really important to Bella.
Yes, she loved it. Right.
Loved it. There's a informal motto about Hunter. Well, there are two mottos that I think Bella took to heart. One is Mihi Cura Futuri, the official motto, the care of the future is mine, which she embraced. And then the other one is, you can always tell a Hunter girl, but you can't tell her much. I think she embraced that too. So we did some research because we have a chapter of our new book about Hunter called Hunter 150. The historian Blanche Wiesen-Cook has written about the class of 42, which included Mim Kelber, our mutual friend, who was Bella's lifelong pal.
And she was her speechwriter and companion.
Yeah, her closest advisor, issues advisor. But they went to Hunter together.
But they were so different. Mim Kelber was
quiet.
So quiet.
Which, remember what Bella used to say? The quiet ones will get you in the end. That's what Mim was impenetrable. But I found a letter that Bella wrote to the new president of Hunter saying, "Dear President Schuster, congratulations on your investiture. I look forward to supporting you." But she was president of the student council, but we were going to hold you to the highest standards. And he writes back and says, "Dear Ms. Savitsky, thank you. I hope we can work together." Thinking even then she was pushing against power.
Right. So interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I don't know what she would do now.
She would be raising her voice and demanding the rights of Congress to investigate, inquire, get evidence, get documents. Remember, she got J. Edgar Hoover's secretary to give over documents.
She was very smart in the Congress. I mean, she took her work on the committees very seriously. She knew all the rules.
They gave her what they thought were bad committee assignments.
Yeah.
Public Works. Let's put her on Public Works, chaired by a Texan. He liked her, and she got lots of money for Westway transfer, and let's put her on government ops. Nobody wants to be on that. But she held hearings. She had an investigative committee.
Yeah.
And she created the Freedom of Information Act and the Sunshine Law.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
She was a lawyer, and she was active in the civil rights movement.
Well, she had a lot of experience with the blacklist, a lot of show business clients who were blacklisted, and a civil rights case.
Was she ever a member of the Communist Party?
No.
No. But, and then she...
You sound like McCarthy.
And then she organized the one of the organizers of Women's Strike for Peace, which was one of the big organizations in the country. And the women were devoted to her.
Yeah, to ban the bomb.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want nuclear fallout in your kids' milk.
Right.
That's how she started.
You remember when we used to do that? Anyway, and then she decided to run for Congress.
Yeah.
And she was very outspoken. She wore big hats.
And her mother said, "Darling, if you wear a hat, they'll never ask you to go for coffee." So she did, and they didn't.
And they didn't.
Yeah.
And her father had a butcher store that was called the Live and Let Live
Meat Market.
Meat Market.
Right where the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel was. Her father was a character. You know, he was anti-World War I, which was not an easy position, you know.
No, right.
And he was a pacifist.
Yeah.
And when he died, Bella defied her Orthodox synagogue and came to the lower part of the congregation and said the mourner's prayer for her father. A lot of people don't know this about Bella, but she could speak Hebrew and Yiddish, but a lot of people her age could speak Yiddish. But she also spoke fluent Hebrew, and she knew all the prayers and loved the music.
Right. She was very rich in culture.
Yeah.
Music and theater, and
she loved
all that stuff.
Loved the opera. Yeah.
Right. Do you remember when somebody in the Israeli consulate said, "No, your name isn't Avzug, it's Abchuk"?
Yeah. She said, "You do your Abchuk, I'll do mine." Well, that would be a Czechoslovakian name, right? She was Martin's family was, I don't know what they were, Lithuanian or something.
I don't know either. Anyway, so let's get back to the role of assertion. I mean, what is going to happen?
Well, we need leaders to be assertive. By the way, Donald Trump is very assertive.
Yeah.
He has shown that people want strong, maybe angry, but strong, relentless leaders. They like it. And maybe it's bad for people to like it, but they like it. And the problem is that women haven't been able to break through because we all remember maybe that our mothers were bossy. Right. I don't know what the story is. But Bella was so ahead of her time.
Do you think she would have run for president?
Martin always thought so. Her husband always thought so.
Yeah.
There's a great story about when Nixon invited Bella to the White House, and she said, "I'm not going there." And Martin said, "Bella, we have to go. I want to see where I'll be living when I'm first man." So they went, and of course she was not exactly friendly on the receiving line.
Yeah.
I think she grabbed Nixon and she said, "When are you going to end the war?"
Right.
And he said, "Keep." And then Pat Nixon said, "I love your little bonnets." But she put her, I don't know, but she would have been great in the Senate.
Yeah. Yes, she would have.
Be one of 100. And the year she ran, there were no women in the Senate. None. And, only 19 in the House. So I think one thing I wish she could have been around to see, I mean, she was not even 79 when she died, but just to have seen the number of women who followed her. And all of these women, like Carolyn Maloney and others, credit her with, enduring the slings and arrows so that they could have a generational jump on empowerment.
Right. And they organized. I mean, the women were, this beginning of NOW, the Women's Political Caucus, the whole thing. She was a major organizer.
Do we know how to do that anymore? I don't know if because of the technology,
the internet,
it's all on the internet.
Yeah. And that's a lot of organizing on the internet, but it's never visible to everybody.
There's still something about a crowd and a rally. I don't know if the next generation is going to be bothered with that experience. It's all going to be your cell phone.
Just hope they don't grow up to be cynical and not involved in things, Well,
we were cynical and involved.
I was.
You were not cynical?
I don't think I was ever cynical. I always thought we could change. I mean, we could make a difference.
Well, it's still
where I got that from.
Well, you were also a terrific leader, but we need more leaders.
Well, I don't know if I was really a leader, but I was certainly there.
You were there?
I was a good strategist. Bella and I worked together. I met her through Al Lowenstein when she had the 17th Congressional District Peace Action Committee. See, she used to organize. I mean, we had more organizations. Al Lowenstein was the king of that. We were Citizens Against, this, that, everything. So it all came together. And she, unfortunately, sometimes we would tease her about the grassroots or the weeds or something. But anyway, she did that.
And then she had a coalition of the organizations.
Right. And I
remember the 51st State. That was one of Bella's brainchild. And free subways. That was,
That my husband was the 51st State, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, they were in it together. It was
Jimmy
nice
Breslin,
when they did
Norman
things
Mailer.
together. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember the first press conference with all of them on the steps of the library, not far from where we're sitting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does it feel to get like this, old and looking back?
I miss the old days. I miss with the days of activism that you described, when there were meetings and there was hope in the air, right? Even, you're right, I was cynical just by nature, but there was hope in getting people together and changing districts and changing votes from one cycle to another.
I think that you're doing that at Roosevelt House. I think with all the great programs and the energy there, that's helping. And hopefully the students who come out of there will be.
The students are committed to getting the census done accurately, getting their parents and their grandparents, who many of whom are wary of answering questions, getting them counted, and they understand that. That's a big issue for them. Transportation, they want to work on improving transportation, disability rights, food sustainability, the environment.
Yeah.
They're really into it.
So then they're hunter tradition, right?
You can't tell them much, but they do want to organize, and they are organizing again.
We're at the end of the program, that conversation.
Went fast.
I enjoyed it tremendously, and we'll have to do some more.
Thanks,
I'm more interested, I want to know about your new book, so.
I'll come back for the book.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
If you'll have me.
Thank you.